I call the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Over the past few months, our nation has been challenged. Australians have been confronted with a series of natural disasters. Floods, cyclones and fires have caused devastation, and in some cases, tragically, people have died. These natural disasters have tested our resilience. Mr Deputy Speaker, it was only 24 months ago that the people of Victoria endured Black Saturday. It was February the 7th, 2009. Victoria was burning. Fires were engulfing the state. Victorians were fearful. The situation seemed perilous. In a week in which we acknowledge again the force of nature, lament the destruction of floods and fires, and mourn the death of fellow Australians, it is also worthy of us to reflect on the outcome of another earlier tragedy. The resilience of communities has been evidenced throughout the fire-affected areas, and it is this resilience of country Victorians that has seen townships rise from the ashes. The scorched earth is regenerating and life is starting to return to normal. But we should not forget the tragic loss of life. On Black Saturday, 173 people, including 23 children, lost their lives. Additionally, 20 children and 28 young adults lost one or both of their parents. While we reflect upon the tragic human toll, we should also remember the destruction that affected those surviving the fires. The reality is that many families went back to their properties to find them destroyed or severely damaged, with 2,133 properties completely destroyed and 1,500 more damaged. In all, 430,000 hectares were burnt on Black Saturday. These communities are getting back on track, but they still need our support. Providing real support to small business development, providing real support for job creation and ensuring real support for infrastructure projects should be key priorities for the Gillard government as they continue to work with the new Victorian Baillieu coalition government. Equally, providing the human support, counselling and the mental and spiritual assistance is crucial for individuals and families. In this context, Mr Deputy Speaker, I acknowledge the significant efforts of the members for Macmillan, Gippsland, Indi, Bendigo and Casey, and in particular the former member for McEwen, Fran Bailey, and her replacement, the current member for McEwen, for their dedication in helping local families to rebuild. Mr Deputy Speaker, in a week when sentiment and emotions are raw, at a time when grief and loss are to the fore, and on a day when expressions of solidarity and concern for the victims of recent disasters are so real, it is timely to pause, to reflect and to acknowledge that it is the concrete work and actions of individuals, communities and governments that will rebuild cities and towns. A tearful voice, a heartrending response, a noble sentiment is appropriate. But unless it is followed by real, substantial and practical efforts, it is ultimately hollow and superficial. What we have witnessed in Victoria has been substantive, largely because local communities have nurtured their own, protected the vulnerable and worked together to rebuild and renew. And I've seen this work as I've travelled through the affected areas, as the members who represent some of those areas here in the chamber today know only too well. The Victorian Coalition Government has announced that when the existing Victorian Bushfire Recovery and Reconstruction Authority is wound down in June, it will implement a series of measures, including a new fire recovery unit to take its place. The fire recovery unit will operate under Regional Development Victoria and act as a one-stop shop for communities and individuals seeking assistance in all aspects of the recovery and rebuilding process. The last thing that bushfire victims need is government red tape and bureaucracy standing in the way of access to real support. On the physical reconstruction effort, some 94% of all destroyed fences have now been repaired or restored. and some 764 building permits have been approved for new buildings, commercial buildings, shops and restaurants and accommodation. 72% of homeowners who lost their principal place of residence in the bushfires have rebuilt, purchased new property or are in the process of rebuilding. 17% intend to rebuild, 4% are undecided and 8% have decided not to rebuild. Currently 91 households remain in temporary villages in Kinglake, Flowerdale, Marysville and Whittlesea. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Victorian bushfires tested the resolve of so many Victorians. And now that resolve is being tested again in other parts of our nation. From the tragedy of the Queensland floods, which are also affecting New South Wales and Victoria, to Cyclone Yasi and the bushfires of southern Western Australia. Black Saturday demonstrated that at times of disaster, at times of need, Australians stand together and help each other out. The spirit of volunteerism is alive and well, and recent disasters have shone a bright note on the true Australian value, a quality seen in communities from Queensland to Victoria, from New South Wales to Western Australia. One need not only look to the emergency service workers, but to the thousands of volunteers who have answered the call in Queensland and elsewhere. And, as always, our emergency services professionals and our Defence Force personnel continue to serve our nation with great distinction. There have been problems with the recovery and the reconstruction effort. People have confronted difficulties and challenges, and in some cases authorities didn't respond as quickly or as efficiently as we would have liked. But recovery from disaster is not an easy process, nor is it an expeditious one. But the recovery and reconstruction efforts in Victoria following the devastating fires of Black Saturday are continuing and progressing well. Sadly, our country will continue to see natural disasters that challenge us, and that's why it is so important to ensure we continue to develop our disaster planning and response. The Coalition strongly associates itself with the Government and the Victorian Government in their continued support of the victims of Black Saturday and all of the bushfire-affected communities. As we remember those who perished in the fires, the thoughts and prayers of all Coalition members are with the families and the loved ones of those who tragically died on February 7, 2009.